Hello, good afternoon or good morning from wherever you're joining in from. Welcome to the launch event of the Landscape for Creative and Social Enterprise in Indonesia Research. My name is Camelia Harahap as the Head of Arts and Creative Industries for British Council Indonesia, who will be guiding you through today's digital launch event. I would like to welcome Dr. Fifi Yulaswati, the Deputy Minister for Social Affairs and Poverty Reduction, Ministry of National Development Planning, Ibu Hanifa Makarim, the Director of Access to Finance, Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy, our partners from the Asian Ventures Philanthropy Network and the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia Pacific, our delivery partners from Social Enterprise UK and Catholic University of Parahyangan and University of Surabaya, our distinguished speakers and panelists, welcome and thank you so much for joining us today. The British Council is the UK's international organization for cultural relations and educational opportunities. We build connections, understanding, and trust between people in the UK and other countries through arts and culture, education, and the English language. The British Council's Developing Inclusive and Creative Economy, or DICE program, aims to address economic and social exclusion through supercharging homegrown creativity, enterprise, and collaboration. DICE takes an ecosystems approach to nurturing economic inclusion with a focus on women, young people, people with disabilities, and other groups often excluded from the mainstream economy. DICE works with and for a growing network of entrepreneurs, artists, enterprises, policymakers, investors, researchers, academics, and community leaders, providing training, mentoring, and funding opportunities, convene international dialogue offline and online, undertake research, and provide the space to co-design, form relationships, experiment, and also explore. The creative and social enterprise landscape research that we are launching today has been developed in partnership with AVPN and UNESCAP, with delivery partners from Social Enterprise UK, Catholic University of Parahyangan, and University of Surabaya. We'll learn more about our partner organizations when we hear from them later on. But before we start the program, I'd like to remind our audiences of the house rules in order for us to ensure that we can run the event smoothly. The British Council will record the whole session. By attending the session today, you acknowledge and have agreed to have images and comments be recorded and possibly rebroadcasted for the future. Throughout the session, you can raise questions by typing in the Q&A box. Please do not forget to include your name, organization, and city. The moderator of the Q&A session will then compile the incoming questions for the panelists. When the session comes to an end, you will be asked to fill in a survey which will provide evaluation and feedback. We also have provided a simultaneous interpreter and sign language interpreter. Bagi siapa yang membutuhkan penerjemah bahasa Indonesia, silahkan klik icon interpretation dan pilih English, walaupun dalam bahasa Indonesia. For those who need sign language interpretation, you can spotlight the Juru Bahasa Isyarat camera. There are 2 sign language interpreters who will take turns during the session. As this is a virtual event, please understand that there may be technical glitches or connections issues to be expected, and we will try our best to mitigate them promptly. Thank you so much for your kind attention, and let's return to the program. Did you know that the largest social enterprise sector in Indonesia is actually the creative industries? Research conducted by the British Council, AVPN, and UNESCAP has revealed that the creative and social enterprises are creating opportunities for both women and young people whilst innovating to address the SDGs. This will be the basis for us to discuss the research that has been done and showcase the interesting findings from the report. However, before we get to that, I would like to invite the Country Director of British Council Indonesia, Hugh Moffat, to open our session and to give a few words. Hugh, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for this opportunity to launch this research in partnership with AVPN and UNESCAP. As Kemi said, the reality is that in Indonesia, the largest number of social enterprises are within the creative industries sector. And what we found with this research, again, is the amazing variety of organizations across Indonesia working in this sector, and it's growing. Creative and social enterprises are creating opportunities for women and young people. And the most important thing is they're innovating in this time of COVID to address SDGs. One of the things we're hearing increasingly is, of course, as we're all adapting, whether we're in the UK or Indonesia, how to respond to COVID, where, for example, cities are emptying out, we're all working from home, we're all here online. How do we respond to that? And what are the business opportunities to enable us to move forward? This is certainly something that is occupying an interest in Indonesia as in the UK. We hear more about how do we bring Wi-Fi connections to villages, to those communities, organizations that will help social and creative businesses work and be effective in the future. These are just some of the topics that we're all currently working and grappling with, and so many ideas are coming through these kinds of networks. In the coming year, of course, we have the Creative Economy for Sustainable Development Year in 2021. This, initiated by Indonesia at the UN, is a great opportunity to showcase some of these examples that we'll be sharing in this particular report and this research. And so, you know, the opportunity is really to highlight how this can contribute to SDGs and growth and response in this changing world for all of us, I think is really quite remarkable. So the study itself that we have conducted with AVPN and partners in UNESCO, and of course so many others that have been mentioned who will be sharing all of this with you, is in two reports. One looks at creative and social enterprises in Indonesia, and the other looks at investing in the investment side, investing in creative social enterprises in Indonesia too. So between the two of them, we get a big picture. We see the supply and demand on both sides. And there are some brilliant statistics coming through. In those that we have researched, the 71% of those creative and social enterprises are making a profit. They're continuing to thrive. It's a thriving sector. We can demonstrate that greater investment definitely leads to inclusive and sustainable growth, and that ownership that's so important within local communities. So you're going to hear more of those findings and those key findings throughout this session. Of course, creative and social enterprises are not solely focused on profit alone or income. In fact, in most cases, in most organizations, and given that focus in Indonesia, addressing inequality, exclusion of young people and women and people with disabilities from the economy is so core to so many of the passions and creativity of these individuals and organizations that have been set up as creative and social enterprises. And that is the story that we need to tell more, and we need to highlight more as we adapt in this new world order, really. This kind of work builds on what we've been working on in Indonesia for 15, 20 years with the creative economy, with social enterprise. And again, it's that reminder of quite that legacy of information that we need to share, and has been enabled by our most recent program, Developing Inclusive and Creative Economy, that focus of inclusion, of bringing those who are excluded from the economy into business, into opportunity, and giving them the showcase that they need. So we hope you'll hear more throughout this session, for those examples, through our partners, through the diversity of the presenters, and thank you for that. So we hope that these reports contribute to a more informed conversation about economy and what does it mean, and spark ideas for more UK-Indonesia exchange. Because let's not forget that within our program and over these 15 years of working in this sector, we have created so many connections back with the UK. And the UK is as interested as learning from Indonesia as vice versa. The opportunity for mutual benefit is significant. And now, and more importantly than ever, is that opportunity to highlight and showcase examples in each other's countries for mutual benefit and for new ideas. How do we address and adapt to this new normal? Thank you very much, Kemi. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Hugh, for your remarks. And now I would actually like to invite the Chief of Technology and Innovation of UNESCAP, Jonathan Wong, to say a few words. Jonathan, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you very much, and thank you very much for inviting me today. And let me just start with a bit about the United Nations Commission for Asia and the Pacific, for those of you who don't know. I always say companies have shareholders and the UN has governments. So very much we work for and support governments, very much in terms of policy. and of course on topics like social enterprise, impact investing, and creative economies. And let me just start my opening remarks by giving some context and going back to 2015, 5 years ago, where the governments, all the governments around the world and the member states of the United Nations signed up to the most ambitious agenda that the world has ever signed up to, which was the Sustainable Development Goals. And these goals have kind of three dimensions, shall we say. They look to have a positive impact on the economy, improve society, and of course, preserve the environment, or people, planet, and prosperity, for a different phrasing. And of course, concepts such as social enterprise and impact investing really came to the fore back in 2015 as mechanisms and modalities for achieving the SDGs, given their three-dimensional nature in looking to create social, economic, and environmental impact within their business models. And I suppose you can't avoid talking about COVID-19 in the current context. Certainly what we've seen are social entrepreneurs and creative entrepreneurs really coming to the fore in providing goods and services to people that the market has left behind, from providing education solutions to rural communities to e-health solutions to the most vulnerable. I think the work of social entrepreneurs and creative entrepreneurs is actually more important than ever before, and it's an idea whose time has come, shall we say. And certainly what we've seen in Asia particularly is governments actually taking a real leadership role globally on this. And I'll give you some examples. For the first time ever in a UN resolution, the governments in Asia and the Pacific committed to creating enabling environments for social enterprise and impact investing, the first in the world and the first in any region where they're committed to this agenda. If you look at the ASEAN agenda, we were very fortunate to work with the British Council in hosting the ASEAN +3 Summit on social enterprise under the ASEAN presidency of Thailand. So there's real energy and government interest in this agenda. And it was within this context that we entered into a formal partnership with the British Council and AVPN, I think about three or 4 years ago now, to really support governments to further this agenda in three core ways: through providing research and analysis, like the report we'll be discussing today, through hands-on policy support, and indeed knowledge sharing, as Hugh mentioned earlier, having policymakers share their experiences on this new and emerging and innovative agenda. Just a bit on creative economies, and again, apologies for going back to COVID-19 again. I think what COVID has thrown up are not just a whole bunch of social challenges in terms of health, but also economic challenges. And I know jobs is a really key agenda for many governments as they look towards strategies kind of post-COVID and indeed during COVID right now. And indeed, I think creative enterprises will be more important than ever and will play a critical role in building back better to more inclusive economies. And I hope that this report today, it really kind of resonates with stakeholders in Indonesia and hopefully kind of informs policy going forward. Let me just conclude by really thanking the British Council and AVPN for what has been a very, very productive partnership, and indeed I always say a fun partnership in supporting governments on this agenda. May I also thank the stakeholders in Indonesia who are with us today, and really give a special thank you to Bappenas and the Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy. Both ministries have shown real leadership on this agenda, not just nationally, but indeed regionally. And very much Bappenas's experience, we've been very honored to share those experiences on UN platforms to inform other countries' development and help nudge other countries to take similar initiatives and to show similar leadership on this agenda going forward. Just a final point, I really hope that you all enjoy the launch event today. And on behalf of the UN and if I may, on behalf of the British Council and AVPN, I'd like to say that we really stand ready to support your efforts to really advance this emerging and innovative agenda going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jonathan, for your words. At the moment, we have about 120 participants with us today for the session. So for those of you who have only just joined us today, as a reminder, you can access the Bahasa Indonesia interpretation by clicking on the interpretation icon and clicking English. For those needed sign language interpretation, you can spotlight the sign language interpreter or the Juru Bahasa Isyarat on your device. Now we will continue to the next agenda of the event, which is the presentation of findings of the research. Here today, we have a few speakers from British Council Indonesia and AVPN, who will each present different aspects of the research. May I also inform you that the research team, Dan Gregory from Social Enterprise UK, Katarina Badra Nawanglupi from Catholic University of Parahyangan, and Aloysius Heri Pratono from the University of Surabaya are all in attendance as well, and may be able to answer some of your questions that are related to the research methodology of the research. Firstly, I would like to invite Mbak Ari Sutanti as the Senior Program Manager for British Council Indonesia to share and present the demand side report of the research findings. Mbak Ari, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Kemi, and good afternoon, everyone. Selamat siang. And possibly some of our DICE colleagues from Brazil or from other parts of the world is coming, so good evening or good morning. So I will present the demand side of the report titled Creative and Social Enterprise in Indonesia. So the report is part of the Developing Inclusive and Creative Economy programs or DICE program, and as Kemi mentioned, is commissioned in partnership with AVPN and UNSCAP. So the report consists of two reports. The study consisted of two reports, demand side and supply side, and I will present the demand side, and later Pak Sian from AVPN will present the supply side. I will start with the first slide. Next slide, please. So this is about pretty much how we are describing social enterprise and also creative enterprise. So for us, how we describe social enterprise is pretty much the definitions that we adopted from our definitions in the flagship report that we launched last year, also in cooperation with, in partnership with the UNSCAP. The report was titled The State of Social Enterprise in Indonesia. So the definitions that we are using is a social enterprise is an enterprise which has social visions and missions to address a social problem in community and or to bring positive impacts to social welfare and the natural environment, and it reinvests its profits in the social missions, empowers community, and exercise good governance principles in managing its business. So this is pretty much what Hugh has briefly mentioned also at the beginning of his opening remarks. Next slides for the creative enterprise. We have adopted the following definitions. We see a creative enterprise as an individuals, groups of individuals or a business entity which carries out a creative economy activities. And creative economy is the embodiment of the added value of intellectual properties that are sources that are sourced from creativity and based on cultural heritage, science, and or technology. So in our report, we distinguish between creative enterprise and social enterprise on the one hand, and social enterprise and creative enterprise on the other hand. So we'll come to that in the next slides. Next slide, please. Yeah. So as we can see here, the survey itself is, I think the survey is quite well in terms of reaching out to respondents. So we have 1,388 respondents responding to our questions, detailed questions. And what we found out that there are many organizations which either have creative activities or creative enterprise which were contributing to inclusive development. But there are also in the middle organizations that consider themselves to be both creative and social enterprise. And this is an area which we are very much interested in. And this is an area where DICE is also working in, and that is why there is the report is called Creative and Social Enterprise in Indonesia, because we are actually trying to examine this part and to explore this part. Okay, so although we recognize that there are also other organizations that are around the peripheries that are also embodying some of the characteristics as well, but we try to focus on the creative and social enterprise. So this is the focus of our presentations after this by me and also by Pak Sian. And next slide, please. As for the findings, we know that this is young sectors in Indonesia, as we can see. Creative social enterprise are relatively young, with the majority established within the last 5 years. And in the past 5 years, the growing is quite significant and shows its potential. Okay, related to that, I think we understand in Indonesia that Backcraft and the creative economy within a ministry was established relatively recently in the past 10 years. And social enterprise itself was introduced in the 5 years development planning 5 years ago and also this year, meaning that it is included in the government midterm development planning, but both social enterprise and also creative economy are introduced and recognized within the government in the past 10 years. Next. In terms of locations of these organizations, we know from this report that the vast majority of the creative creative economy organizations are operated in urban area. And for social enterprise, although not as big, but also operated in urban area. Most of creative social enterprise are micro and small medium enterprise. And there is a need to support the creative and social enterprise to engage more with the marginalized area based on this finding. Next. The next finding is very useful for us because it highlights that creative social enterprise are creating more jobs, as we can see, for women and young people as compared to other enterprises in Indonesia or other business in Indonesia, which is very interesting from the perspective of the need to engage more women in enterprise, and also from the perspective on how to address the issue of underemployment. I think this is particularly very interesting to government on how a creative and social enterprise contributes to the achievement of sustainable development goals. This could be also explored further why this is the case. In terms of programming for inclusions in the community, I think it suggests that creative and social enterprise has a lot to offer to us. Next slide, please. So,
kepada teman-teman peserta Indonesia, silahkan mengklik opsi English untuk mendengar.
The graph tells us that creative social enterprise are creating jobs faster than other business for young people and old people, also for women and also for disabled workers. Pre-COVID, this is the case. But again, this study done before COVID, and we don't know what is the impact of COVID-19 has been on this. And please keep an eye on our British Council COVID-19 response survey, which will be done soon. Hopefully we can have more data on that. Next slide, please. These slides suggest that creative and social enterprise bring new disruptive solutions to the achievement of sustainable development goals. This is great, and we are seeing that creative and social enterprise are focused on addressing the SDGs with particular focus on poverty, hunger, food security, ending hunger, food security, nutrition, and promote sustainable agriculture, and also addressing issue of employment and decent work. And also it seems that it also seems to be the case that the younger creative social enterprise, the more likely that they are going to be addressing SDGs as well. Next slide. Okay, so almost all enterprise bring new, disruptive, and sustainable solutions to environmental and social challenges. This shows us that creative and social enterprise are busy in their business. They see innovation and creativity as critical to their performance. That shows us that all these organizations are really trying hard to think of new products, new services, new ideas, and new practices to address these challenges. If we are looking for where innovation is going to happen in Indonesia, then certainly we can look deeply at the creative and social enterprise, and might not to look further than that. And this is should be also very interesting for government to see how creative and social enterprise bring new disruptive and sustainable solutions to the environmental and social challenges. And 98% of CSE agrees that innovations is an important factor for them, as well as almost all creative social enterprise agree that idea generation and creativity are important for their business performance. So next slide, please. Okay. Creative social enterprise is making strong contributions to inclusive economic development. This chart suggests that is the case. And in the research, we asked all enterprises to tell us about some of their commitments to inclusive business practices to assess how much of a contributions that creative social enterprise are actually making to inclusive economic development. So from this chart, and graph, when it comes to allocating resources for social and environmental activities, we found that 54% of these enterprises allocate some budget towards that, which is very promising sign. This is the top chart in the table. We also note that these enterprises are trying hard to ensure that low-income customer can access their goods and services, which is also very encouraging. We see that most of these creative social enterprise try to measure social impact, social value, and also on the other hand, we see that they are perhaps less successful when it comes to enforcing paying suppliers premium rates for their product and services that they are purchasing, and also for paying their staff national living wage, because less of half of this creative social enterprise paying the national living wage. That seems to be something that we need to encourage creative and social enterprise to be better doing at. But what we don't know here, and it would be very interesting to find out, and possibly the government has the data, is that whether there is a benchmark to this, the average, and how does this compare to the mainstream economy? And while the number seems very low here, but it might be high if we compare across SMEs more broadly, if we have the benchmark. Okay, next slide, please. So, okay, in terms of wider ecosystem, where creative and social enterprise are situated, we know that the major barrier of this creative social enterprise that they identified is the lack of access to business support. But this is also happens to small medium enterprise in general, and also to social enterprise. So on the access of finance, we will hear further from the presentation from AVPN and Patsian on the supply side report. Next slide, please. Okay, in addition to business support, we see other thing or other issue in the chart, in the table. The primary one is the lack of understanding of what the business is trying to do. Other issue that we identify are regulations, broader economic climate, and intellectual property rights. And again, this might be becoming worse now, considering the COVID situations. Next. In terms of support and access to that are provided for creative and social enterprise, they report that the most frequent access to all this type of CSE reports the most frequent access to all this type of support, and general enterprise receive minimum support. Yeah. So again, sorry if I may repeat. Let me paraphrase. In terms of support and access to that creative and social enterprise can get, only around 1/3 of creative social enterprise have identified that they had access to support in terms of training programs. It includes coaching, training, and technical advice. But only around 15%, 1/5, that have ever been through incubators program. This suggests that more dedicated incubations and acceleration could be useful to help the sectors growing. Okay, next slide, please. So in the summary here, we can see that as mentioned earlier, creative and social enterprise are relatively still small sectors and relatively young sectors also in Indonesia, and majority are operating urban area and targeting local market. And the summary also confirms our hypothesis in our DICE projects. Because our DICE program, we had a number of hypotheses at the start, and the report does appear to provide some evidence that these hypotheses are accurate. And what is good news is that this is consistent in other 5 DICE countries, which is Brazil, Pakistan, South Africa, and Egypt. We are also doing the research in the UK as well. So the first hypothesis that relates to the summary is that creative social enterprise creates more jobs for women and young people, so that creative social enterprise are more inclusive than other type of enterprise or other type of business. The second, creative social enterprise are creating new solutions that are innovative and addressing the sustainable development goals. And creative social enterprise have great commitment to innovations and creativity in their business. The third hypothesis, which is also proven and in the summary, is that creative and social enterprise are trying to share opportunities and more inclusive in terms of also using their surplus or cross-subsidy to achieve the specific social objectives. Then we can go after this to the recommendations, I suppose, in the next slides. So on the recommendation, as we can see here, creative and social enterprise can do more to employ people with disability, including invisible disabilities. Government policy could encourage employment of marginalized people, such as through subsidies for social security or taxation offset for more inclusive employment. Some support from creative networks would help the local artists to get networking with wider community and access the market. And when it comes to business support, incubators and accelerator programs to strengthen creative and social enterprise can be further improved and replicated. I think that's all my presentations, and we will upload the report after this, and you can download everything in the report in the more detail. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mbak Ari, for the very interesting presentation of the research findings. Now, I would like to invite our partners from AVPN, Patsian Loh as the Chief of Staff and Policy Advisor, and Roshni Prakash as the Knowledge Director, who will present the supply side report of the research. Patsian and Roshni, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Camelia, and good afternoon and good evening to everyone, and good morning as well to everyone that is dialing in into this webinar and launch of the report. Our deepest thanks to our partners, UNESCAP, British Council, Social Enterprise UK, as well as many other local partners that have helped us along this process. And Ari's presentation of the demand side report is a very good start to help us better understand what kind of support will help the development of the creative and social economy in Indonesia. I'd like to just very quickly refresh that the supply and demand concept in the context of this report is looking at the supply and demand for resources that will help with the growth of the creative and social economy in Indonesia. Resources in this context will include financial capital and also human and intellectual capital. As such, when we talk about the demand for these types of resources, it will be the community of creative and social enterprises, as Ari has just shared. And then when we look at the supply of these resources, we are looking at the broader spectrum of organizations that will provide financial, human, and intellectual capital, including foundations, impact funds, financial institutions, other forms of capacity builders, as well as governments. So in the scope of our research, we have spoken to organizations across this spectrum. Setting that stage, I'll now like to invite my colleague, Ms. Roshni Prakash, Knowledge Center Director of AVPN, to share with you at first our early findings, and I will come back to the floor to share with you more about the policy side findings. Roshni, please.
Thank you very much, Patsion. It's a pleasure to be here with you all today. Can I have the first slide, please? I'm just going to take you through some of our high-level findings from the supply-side landscape report. This supply-side landscape is actually just developing in Indonesia, but growing very rapidly. So you'll find that many of the findings that I refer to are qualitative in nature. Let me start by saying that Indonesia has one of the fastest growing impact investing markets in Southeast Asia. Particularly since 2013, we have seen an increasing number of local impact investors join the scene. With their entry, so has there been an increase in an interest in local issues, such as heritage conservation, creative education, and arts-based community development. So this is a great sign for any new or established creative and social enterprise in Indonesia. Right now, about half of these enterprises are self-funded. Less than 1% of them are accessing any equity or equity-like investment. The numbers that access debt or overdraft facilities are also in the low single digits. So there is a huge opportunity here for them to find more varied sources of financing to help them scale and grow their businesses. But there are some barriers that we should be aware of. I think the largest barrier that came out through the research was that this is a sector that is very diverse, and it includes areas such as gaming technology, as well as artisan heritage crafts. So for any new investor, it is relatively difficult to come in and assess opportunities on the table in a like-to-like manner. Oftentimes, they will then reflect on what they know best, which tends to be finance, technology, banking, and they will look for opportunities in these areas. So opportunities in fashion e-commerce, for example, would have more potential at this point to receive impact investing funds. So this is a challenge for several creative and social enterprises. How do you demonstrate how you can achieve your revenue or profit in a way that is meaningful for impact investors and other financial service providers? How do you demonstrate the replicability and scaling potential of your business? Another issue is how do you define what collateral is, and how do you define what is meaningful collateral in a way that your investor will understand? So this is one of the broader insights that we have highlighted in the report. There is a lot of impact capital in the market being provided by local investors, and they are just looking for opportunities. And so now it is incumbent upon the creative and social enterprises to be able to communicate to them the opportunities that are available. May I have the next slide, please? So in this slide, I wanted to highlight how impact investors may be thinking about potential opportunities so that CSEs can leverage on these appropriately. Now, at the core of impact investing is the idea of intentionality. That is the intentional desire to create social or environmental impact through the investment alongside the financial returns. Now, the balance in which this is achieved across social, environmental, and financial returns differs significantly from investor to investor. So it is important to understand the particular preferences of your investor when making a pitch to them. For example, when you are in ecotourism, and this is a sector that is growing and thriving in Indonesia, it is very clear the community and social benefit of an investment in a hotel, because you can see how the environment is enhanced and the people who live around the hotel have got better livelihoods and more sustainable incomes. Now, this is an opportunity that an investor would understand very easily. Another opportunity in the social arena could be something like a co-working platform for creative entrepreneurs to bounce ideas off each other, learn from each other, and together develop the creative economy. This is an example that is quite well illustrated by the platform Kumpul.id. So at the moment, there is a tremendous opportunity here because impact investors in Indonesia, they're looking primarily at the social impact of the venture that they are intending to invest in. And if creative and social enterprises can leverage this interest, they will be able to find many more investors ready to support them on their journey. On this note, I'd like to hand over to Patsy to take us through the policy implications. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roshni, for setting the stage with the findings from the impact investors' perspective. Now, if I have the next slide, please. What we have also uncovered in our research is that it is critical that policy plays a role to unlock more of such social and impact capital that will be able to support the growth of the creative economy. The way we see policy playing a role as it emerges from the research is that it can take capacity building, capital mobilization, and legislative roles. Let me explain each point. The capacity building role of policy will be important because the social enterprises and creative enterprises that need support have to be further strengthened to be investment ready and engage investment capital. And so government support for incubators, accelerators, mentorship programs, and so forth will be crucial in the growth of CSEs and also provide the very needed boost to engage investment capital interest. Secondly, when it comes to unlocking and mobilizing more capital, government policy plays a very important role here as well. Not only is there a need for ministries that involve the financial sector and development sector and creative sector to be engaging with each other and offering different forms of financial schemes. There may be also a need for government support that looks at the different maturity stages of creative and social enterprises and the kinds of financial needs that they may have. Creative enterprises will continue to face different forms of challenges as they grow and look at different kinds of investment capital to meet their needs during different stages of their growth. And then last but not least, there is clearly a need for legislative support. And the extent to which there is clear alignment between regulatory support for impact investing or other forms of impact capital alongside the regulatory environment around startup investing and other forms of sustainable financing will need to be coordinated so that there is a cohesive and aligned support for regulations that will unlock more capital. So in summary, government actors do need to leverage and coordinate across a diverse range of policy interventions so that they have a more comprehensive toolkit that will create a more enabling environment for creative economy industries. Next slide, please. Another observation in our research is that the diversity of Indonesia, both in terms of its geography as well as the diversity of the creative and social economy itself, would require significant localization and contextualization of the type of policy intervention. And there will be no one-size-fits-all approach that will work for different parts of Indonesia that will have an opportunity to grow its creative economy. We have already seen some success in the likes of the Jakarta Creative Hub and the Bandung Creative Hub. So it is quite clear that city-based, local, economy-based development that will allow policy support of the local creative economy will make a greater difference. So this diversity also means that both at national government level, there will need to be this level of support to build the capacity of local policymakers to work more closely with the creative and social enterprises, but also to encourage more localized capital ecosystems to be unlocked so that in various cities and other localization in Indonesia, you can see more local participation of social impact capital. So government support for the creative economy should be, we recommend, be city-led and localized so that it will effectively cater to the unique needs of the local creative economy. Next slide, please. So to summarize some of our findings in the supply side of our research, I'd like to share with you a few key points. We have noted, as Roshani had shared, that creative and social enterprises can and do attract financing opportunities and support from a wide variety of sources. However, the needs of these creative and social enterprises do vary significantly. And so the kind of support that they will need will also have to match this level of diversity. There are many creative and social enterprises who have still not yet accessed external finance, and some may in fact not be so much interested in doing so, with the exception of certain subsectors like ecotourism. And so it is important to build the capacity of these enterprises to be ready and able to access investment capital. Various barriers for these creative and social enterprises to access investors have already been discussed, and we should address these, including the mismatch of expectations that may arise between investors and investees. Some of these areas to be addressed as a matter of priority will include the lack of an investment pipeline, regulatory challenges, and also the investment readiness of such creative and social enterprises. Next slide, please. We do see incredible potential for the government to develop programs that can channel more investment into the creative and social enterprise ecosystem, recognizing, however, that the diversity of this universe will need some alignment and coordination among different forms of policy programs and initiatives between the social sector, the creative sector, and the technology sector. To the extent that we can address any overlaps and align these kinds of policy support, we have an opportunity to also strengthen the communication of the investors' expectations and their approach to balancing social, environmental, and financial returns, through which we can then also better support the CSEs to better able achieve the SDG goals that they have. And last but not least, it is critical that we consider the full range of impact capital that can be provided, not just investment capital, but also philanthropic or capital like grants, so that they can better support the ability of these creative and social enterprises to be more sustainable and catalyze them to be ready for the next stage of investment. That is all the sharing we have for you today from the supply side report, and we look forward to hearing from you for the rest of the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patzian and Roshini. There are some very interesting findings from the research, which I'm sure our audiences and panelists are eager to dissect and discuss about. As a reminder, attendees can raise questions by typing in the Q&A box, but please don't forget to include your name, organization, and city. Which now leads us to the second part of our agenda, which is a discussion with several esteemed panelists. This session will be moderated by Tristan Ace, who is the Global Lead, Partnerships and Development, Social Enterprise, and Inclusive and Creative Economies for British Council. Tristan, over to you.
Thank you, Kemi. Great to be here. If only virtually on this occasion, or I did wear my batik tie especially for this occasion. So I have some connection with Indonesia here, sitting in Hong Kong this afternoon. So I'm delighted to have the privilege to moderate this afternoon's question and answer session. And I'm already seeing some really interesting questions coming up in the chat box, which I will endeavor to summarize and to pose to our panelists later this afternoon. But first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to invite a number of key senior experts, stakeholders within the social and creative economy in Indonesia to share some of their initial reflections on what they've heard this afternoon on the key findings and on the recommendations. And as Kemi said earlier today, we have adopted an ecosystem approach with all of our work, which means that we look at all of the issues around how to build a sustainable ecosystem to support social and creative enterprises. So we have representatives from government, we have representatives from investors and from the finance community, and of course, we have social and creative entrepreneurs themselves. So I'm just going to introduce our panelists, and then I'm going to invite them each to share for a few minutes their initial reflections and findings from what they've heard this afternoon. So first of all, we have Dr. Vivi Yules Rati, who is the Deputy Minister for Social Affairs and Poverty Reduction from the Ministry of National Development Planning. So fantastic to have such a senior government official with us today. We also have Ms. Hanifa Makarim, who is a Director of Access to Finance at the Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy. So again, somebody right at the heart of thinking in government about these issues. We then have an impact investor with us today, Jeffrey Joe, who's a co-founder of Alpha JWC Ventures. And we're particularly keen to hear from him, particularly given we only heard that about 1% of social and creative enterprises have accessed any kind of equity investment. So we'll be keen to explore how we can perhaps increase that figure in the coming years. And then we also have two creative and social entrepreneurs, as I said. So we have Dr. Divinati Larasati, who is the co-founder of the Bandung Creative City Forum, but she's also a council member of the International Advisory Council for the Creative Industries Policy and Evidence Center, otherwise known as the PEC, which was an organization established by Nesta, a UK-based organization that used to be the National Endowment for Science and Technology and the Arts, but is now commonly known as Nesta, and have been doing some work in the UK and around the world in growing the creative economy particularly. And then finally, we have a social and creative entrepreneur who has a name that I found quite difficult to pronounce, Adinindaya. However, I've been informed I can refer to her as Nin, who I'm sure many of you on this call will know, and she's the founder of Lawe, which is a fantastic creative enterprise and has been involved with our work now for a number of years. So as I said, I'm going to invite each of them to share their reflections. Just to see now the number of participants has increased. I think perhaps people from the UK may have joined us. So that's fantastic. We now have just under 150 participants on the call today. Again, testament to the interest in this emerging agenda. Okay, so I'm going to start off with Ibu Vivi. So over to you. I believe you have some slides that you'd also like to share with the group as well. So Ibu Vivi, please, over to you for your initial reflections.
Thank you, Tristan. Hello, everybody. It's been a pleasure for me to be part of this important event. Please let me share some slides. First of all, I would like to congratulate to the AVPN, the British Council, as well as the UNESCAP for this the launch of two important report, particularly for Indonesia. I would like to see that this report is really work as a comprehensive compendium, particularly to provide a comprehensive landscape for the creative and social enterprises, as well as the financing of the social investment. Again, this is for Indonesia because I think within the last 5 years, there are more and more growing numbers of the social enterprises, but not many of us understanding about or could distinguish well between those definitions. Creative, some people mentioning about the creative enterprise, and some mention about the social. When we are talking about social enterprises, are they creative one or the other way around? So define. I mean, the report really could define clearly about the distinguish between the creative enterprises, social enterprises, and actually we now understand that we do have both, yeah, the hybrid one. Some of the results from the survey particularly provide valuable insight for us, the government, in terms of policy. I'm just thinking that we don't need to start from the zero. We could learn from many other country experiences. But again, talking about Indonesia is not about one location or talking only in Jakarta. We should aware that there are many differences as well as challenges surrounding Indonesia outside Java, particularly in less developed regions, yeah, in islands, in eastern part. So the report also provide some good data for us that could be used as a baseline, yeah, about the social enterprises landscape. But I think like the data that Ari has presented, talking about what is it, the data on budget or ensuring a low income customers, I think we need to be very careful that we use the same definition. But it's fine for now. When we could have a commitment that the data is useful, then we could get more attention for Central Bureau Statistics to gather this kind of data. And little by little, we could have later on better data on the SMEs, as well as more understanding on the creative and social enterprise. Of course, this in line also with the need in terms of reporting the progress of SDGs, because some of the goals, I mean, the indicators and under some goals actually is still in the process of exploring, and some of them relate to the creative economy. For Indonesia, the creative and economy and the social enterprise really help us to expand our employment opportunity. From the left-hand side graph, you could see that unemployment in Indonesia has actually decreased in the last decade, but with a slower pace. This means that we need to go beyond the business as usual. We need to find out other initiative, need have an extra effort as well as right policy to keep or to speed up the pace of the unemployment reduction more effectively. The current unemployment actually coming from the low level of education and also the young age. So this is really in line with the report that provide insight that the CSE have created faster employment for young people. So I would talk to many other people, particularly in the government, that there is a need to expand the capability as well as the capacity of the creative and social enterprises in Indonesia to provide opportunity to expand its potential. The report also shows about the social cohesion as well as some initiative to be part of the inclusive strategy because it also provides a conducive environment for some vulnerable groups, including disability and also the women groups. Some challenges, however, we all know about the COVID that still going on in Indonesia. I assume that many good numbers, figures from the report coming prior to the onset of the COVID-19. So, if you could see on the right-hand side, this coming from the data. This is very recent from the Central Bureau of Statistics, just a couple of days ago, mentioning that there are 3 sectors hit mostly by the COVID-19, mainly in accommodation and F&B, transportation and warehouse, and other services. I assume many of our creative and social enterprises are here. We could see that the demand is the reduction of the demand as well as income is so huge. So this is real a challenge for us ahead, in which we need to work together. Yeah. I would like to hear maybe in this event what kind of strategy that our social enterprise and our creative enterprises have to tackle the COVID impact. From the data here, they keep people, but there are a couple of strategy like sending home, but with half payment, meaning they have some responsibility to keep people in job. Yeah. There are other existing challenges that coming from the census economy. Mainly, they are talking about the competitors or liquidity, as well as marketing and value chain fragmentation, infrastructure or energy, as well as regulation, as the report mentioned. So these are homeworks that we have to work together. Cannot be only by the government, but of course with the player itself, as well as other stakeholders like the businesses. In the middle of this crisis, which we don't know yet when it's over, the creative and social enterprise has to be more creative for sure and work harder for the last. This is coming from the FGDs that we hold last year with Compact DPET about find out the challenges, particularly on the social impact financing. There are a couple of challenges, including in terms of the area of capability or capacity. Yeah. in which there are some concern about difficulty to get the full talent at the initial stage, lack of mentor and facilitators. The report mentioned about this also, and also the lack of clarity or standard for social impact financing scheme. Some of them mention about it is too complex, or no one could explain clearly about the rules. I think because the design, many of the design of the scheme are without or are done without consultation with many stakeholders, or maybe lack of socialization. In fact, some of them are involving a big player. So still many people don't really understand about the mechanism or scheme. Also about the lack of data, access of information about the needed group. I think this is more on the communication in transparent and in continuous engagement. On in regard on the financial access, the report already mentioned about the due diligence barrier, as well as lack of the credit guarantor, particularly for the vulnerable businesses. In terms of the gap analysis, this is along the line with the report, the need for the mentorship, as well as collaboration between incubator and accelerators to extend the mentorship networks. However, I want to add some more about developing an indicators. Yeah, this is important because we want to build kind of like a critical mass in which at the end we could see about the progress. Some indicators that we could measure include business performance, job creation, income of the increase of income of community, up until to be more specific, like literacy, environment protection, and also cultural preservation. This is only a mapping about the willingness of the investor on the financing. They are willing to finance the startup mainly in the form of the investment. For the incubators or accelerators, it's a bit different. It's more on the grant basis. So this is kind of like when we know we have a more complete landscape about the CSEs. I just want to add more that at the government side, including the local government, there are more and more reform at the local leaders. Yeah, this is only an idea that among 514 districts and cities, there are some of local leaders that really a champion that already moved from the previous traditional bureaucrat, now become more on the collaborators, or that could facilitating a network. With Compact as well, we work together with some local government, and it's really worked well if we could sit together between the CSEs and the local government, and it's really combining all the efforts and the potential. At the end, Indonesia has just been part of the upper middle income country. It is projected that Indonesia would be part of the 5 big economy in the next 5 years. So there are many that we could we could do in order to make an inclusive development for Indonesia. Of course, this is along the line with many effort in terms of the SDGs 2030. For sure, we need to create enabling environment to support the CSEs continue to grow. Could be through the collaboration in the co-design, or in a blended in the finance scheme, or blended finance, as well as the collaboration can be started at the local level. We could make it in the stages, show the long-hanging fruit of the collaboration. Then the replications or copy pasting with other local government can be done more easily. Other thing I already is I just want to again congratulate with the reports. It's really enthusiastic to work further based on the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Ibu Vivian, and some interesting insights there around the importance, particularly of data, to help inform better decision making. And also, I think what was really interesting was the potential role that social or creative and social enterprises have in employment creation, addressing some of those some of those issues that you highlighted in your presentation there. So thank you very much indeed. We have lots of questions coming up. What I might do is just give a quick summary of some of those questions now, so that some of our panelists might wish to just reflect on them in their interjections in a moment. So we have questions around social enterprise and the need for policy or regulation from government. And so there's a question there around whether or not there's a need for policy regulation for social enterprises and what initiatives are currently underway in that regard. A question around incubators. Interestingly, our research showed us that I think it was less than a third of creative and social enterprises had ever participated in an incubation program, so demonstrating that perhaps there was some room for increased support by incubators for these types of enterprises there. So what efforts are being made around incubation programs? And then some questions around the need for mentoring. So there might be, the finance might be there, but perhaps the skills not quite are there yet. And how can we access better support, coaching, mentoring for creative and social entrepreneurs as well? So a quick summary there. If anybody wants to also respond to those in your reflections, please feel free to do so. But I'm now delighted to invite Ibu Hanifa, who is the Director of Access to Finance at the Ministry of Tourism and the Creative Economy. So please, Ibu Hanifa, over to you for your reflections.
Okay, thank you. I don't have a presentation, but I will just comment from the report and from this previous speaker. I think in Indonesia, actually, we have a lot of creative and social enterprise. And also we have a lot of impact investor. But the problem is they are, how to say, the limit access from the enterprise to the investor. They don't know how or where to find the investor. So that's one problem, I think. I think we need to be more, give the information to the social enterprise, or we make the platform to match them. So the enterprise know where to find the funding, and the investor also know where to find the investee. And another thing in my point is funding is not the only problem, but also about coaching. Coaching and mentoring is very important, because if they don't have the skill to how to use the funding wisely, and then they will use in the different way, and then it's not good for their business. So I think coaching, either that's from the government or from the private or from the university, I think is very important. And as Bu Vivi mentioned, Indonesia is very large. So it's not only focusing in Jakarta or cities in Java, but we also have to focus in other city beside Java. That's what we need to do. So I think all the government need to work together to build the acceleration and incubator, and also connecting with the investor. I think that's from my opinion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ibu Hanifa. And this is a perfect segue, I think, to hear from somebody who's been engaged with investing in a number of enterprises, an impact investor. And it'd be great to hear from you, Jeffrey Joe, the co-founder of Alpha JWC Ventures. Your reflections on what you've heard so far, but particularly what you think the potential is for impact investing within creative and social enterprises, and also what some of the key challenges that need to be overcome might be. So, Jeffrey, are you with us? I'll invite you to turn on your camera and unmute yourself.
Yes. Hi, Tristan. Thanks a lot. Yeah. So this is very interesting, and I think it's very important report because so just a bit of background. Alpha JWC, we are an Indonesia-focused venture capital fund. We manage about $200 million asset under management, and we invest from seed until a bit later stage of Series A and Series B. We have been investing about 40 companies, 30 plus of them are in Indonesia. And to be honest, we are not 100%, we don't have any specific sector focus, or we are Indonesia focused fund. But what's interesting is that our investments have a couple of companies that are in the social impact and also creative, right? And I really believe that there's a lot of opportunities in that space, and I will get to my thoughts about what is the opportunities and the challenges. For example, we invested in Kopi Kenangan. Kopi Kenangan is in the F&B coffee chain, and we invested in the seed round where they just started, and they just closed a $100 million round during the COVID, right? So it just showed that, and to be honest, there's a lot of great things about Kopi Kenangan, and our hope is that they can be one of the success story that will bring this creative industries not only to be a successful company in Indonesia, but also hopefully can bring the brand and also the name of Indonesia to the region as well. We also invested in Modalku. Modalku is a peer-to-peer lending company that's helping a lot of SMEs. So the peer-to-peer is mostly for SMEs, and I'm sure there are a lot of them that's also in creative and also impact. We also invested in Tani Hub. They are empowering farmers. There's a lot of impact angle there. And all of these companies are pretty well funded, right? And they are doing very well. They have a lot of they have big opportunities, and they all of them have potential to be a really big and successful companies, not only in Indonesia but also in region. However, of course, it's still a very early stage for the impact and also creative industry in general. Like what Bu Hanifa mentioned about where to find the information about investors and all that. For example, I'm involved in Angin, is angel investing in angel investor network of Indonesia. They also have a lot of work on impact side, and they also have the platform to connect between founders, entrepreneurs to potential even earlier than seed angel investors, right? So that's something that's growing. We believe that it's important for Indonesia to have the whole ecosystem, not only investors, but also the angels, some of the corporates, government, to really go hand in hand. And I believe that this report is just giving more attention to this topic. And then I really hope that we can start to see a lot more activities in the space, because there's a huge opportunities there. But I really believe that we need to make sure that everyone is playing their part. I have also hope that the government can do more to increase the awareness. Some people mentioned about the regulations, right? I believe is a bit too early maybe for regulation, because what will be regulated now will be very different compared to if the industry is already big. I think, of course, regulation is important, but I think we can focus on educating and increasing the awareness of the industries. The mentorship, for example, in Alpha JWC, we are very big in mentorship. We believe that the way to make the company successful is also to become their partner in thinking and also brainstorming, especially during the difficult times. And I think the government can do a lot of great job in spurring the whole ecosystem, bringing more and more people in this space to create the support function to that. So actually, I'm really excited to see what will come next in the near future.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Brilliant. So some reflections there on the role of government. So perhaps we can come back to our government representatives later in the session to hear what they have to say in response to some of your reflections there. Brilliant. So I'm now going to move to the first of our two creative stroke social entrepreneurs for their reflections. But before I do that, I will just ask our panelists. We may not get an opportunity to cover all the questions, so please feel free to type your responses in the chat box to some of those specific questions that might be directed to you. Although, of course, we will try to pick out some of those themes and get back and hear from you later in the session as well. But do feel free just to respond directly. And with that in mind, there was one question for you for our next speaker, which I think is quite relevant for our next speaker directly. And our next speaker is Dr. Devinti Larasati, who is the co-founder of the Bandung Creative City Forum. And there's a question here, which I might just raise right now, given that it is quite relevant for your experience, Tita, which is, I was just looking it up, I saw it a moment ago. It was from, I've lost it now, but it was related to the, here we go. So it was from Paolo Mercado in the Philippines, and it was a specific question on the role of cities in promoting the creative economy and creative city projects. So what in your view are the city level projects that should be prioritized for funding, and is building infrastructure such as creative hubs, or is it funding creative and social enterprise groups directly to sustain their work? So which would be the priorities? That's perhaps an additional question for you to reflect on after we hear from your initial reflections. So Tita, over to you.
Sure, thank you. Yes, you can call me Tita. And well, actually, this report really reflects a lot of what the challenges that we are facing right now. And if you talk about creative economy, then we keep talking about this word ecosystem, which is maybe in different people, different head has different ideas about what the ecosystem will be. But then we also look into the added value, because if you look into the definition of creative economy, then if you talk about the value, usually if you talk to investors, then they would like to see the impact and how to measure them. And what if the value is not tangible? What if, or how would you measure, for example, inclusivity or confidence or pride and so on and so on. So this has to do with my position at PEC as well. Tristan has mentioned that I'm a council member of it. And it is found globally that actually creative economy in different parts of the world, they are also dominated by informal sectors. So not those with, for example, higher education in creative industries, or those who can really have easy access to internet and so on. But then these informal sectors are actually a part of the ecosystem that built the field itself. So the ecosystem also includes in Indonesia, the nomenclature is 16 or maybe now 17 subsectors of creative industries. But also we have more than that. We have sectors that works in R&D only, for example, or community hubs that call themselves not enterprises but organizations, but actually also working for non-profit to develop creative economy in the area. And the most challenges is actually as well access to funding, and this brings me to the discussion about regulations and so on, because I'm really now at the moment take into preparing, or not preparing, preparation is done, because now we have Bandung will have a bill on creative economy at the city level. Why is this important? Because at national level we already have the regulation, we already have the policy, and at the province level we already have the West Java bill for creative economy. But for Bandung, because it's a special case, and we have now in this draft of bill 8 issues that we would like to surface. And this bill is now being discussed, so it's in the phase of pembahasan at the legislative level. And among those, we see important because otherwise, if creative economy is not mentioned in a bill or is not regulated by the government, then it will not be included in the what is RPJMD, in the short-term planning of the city and middle-term planning of the city. And this has made it difficult for the pentahelic stakeholders of the creative economy to work together. Of course, it was mentioned that maybe regulation is not enough. Maybe regulation can come later, policy can come later, true. But we have been working without regulations, so we work our separate ways. So organizations and activists and all these creative economy entities, they work by themselves, and government also make the rules themselves. And what happen if you have the bill? Then you can actually integrate the programs together. So that's what has been happening in the previous period of Bandung government. So we really accelerate the creative economy development. But now we can hardly see any creative economy mentioned in the planning of the in the city planning. So that's why we find it difficult to connect with the government, because otherwise we cannot work together like that. And at the local level, we see it important because, as mentioned before, maybe Bandung is the member as a city of design of UNESCO Creative Cities Network, and cities in UCCN all have this commitment that they would use their creative potentials to answer to the SDG, the Sustainable Development Goal. And as we know, since 2017, there's the new urban agenda. So we have to ground the SDG to the local level. And how would you work at the local level? Because we are different from one another. As mentioned before, Bandung happens to be very urban, while we also have cities and regencies in areas that are remote, coastal, mountains, and so on and so on. So how would you ground it to the local level and make the local government care or understand about this? Because the dispute now is that the national level rule and the regional level rule, it doesn't really tell how the local level, the city level should organize where creative economy should be. So it so happens that in Bandung, it's under the Department of Tourism and Creative Economy. But then for other cities, it might be under Department of Youth or Sport or whatever else. And this has made it a dispute, a discussion among the legislative people to set the bill straight. Because in the previous coordinating ministry for economy, they had a research that creative economy is actually touching upon or is integrated within at least 18 different institutions in the government. So that's why we need a proper like umbrella for regulations. Another point is that, well, BCCF is one in Bandung, but then we have a lot of other kind of organizations, also city changers in their own areas. So we formed this Indonesia Creative Cities Network, and it has now a member of more than 210 cities all over Indonesia. So we have this commitment to do the 10 principles of creative city, which also includes keywords such as inclusivity, heritage, and so on and so on. And then we try to adapt these 10 principles into the government's KPI, and so on and so on. So ICCN is the knowledge partner of U20, which is the urban, which is a working group of G20 G20 countries that focus on urban issues. So U20 released a white paper and policy recommendations to be given to G20 leaders. And ICCN wrote the part about inclusive creative economy and the future of work. And why is this important? Because in that policy recommendations, which will be given to the G20 government, is that it contains an argument of why creative economy is important, because it includes, it is the, like the report said, it is the most agile sector to include, for example, women, youth, disabled, and so on and so on. And also the future of work means including also how technology can actually connect instead of divide communities, business, people, and so on, and towards the SDG implementation. So my last point is maybe about the 2021 will be an important year for creative economy, because the UN has said that it will be the year of creative economy for sustainable development. And it's the previous Beckraf who proposed this, and it got accepted, and it was officiated as the year of creative economy in 2021. So that's why I think next year will be a good momentum. It's a great moment for us to make a statement of how creative city, how creative economy can be a solution for things that we are facing now all over the world. And in 2023, it has to do with the U20 policy recommendations, because the G20 and ASEAN summit will be held in East Nusa Tenggara in Indonesia. So again, this will be another momentum to look forward to, of how would you use creative economy to move people, to move community, and so on. Because this report, of course, is a research document, but then it's an opportunity for us to turn that into real action, into real impact, and how would we show that as a measurable or as a worthy for investment and so on. And I'll say again hi to Paulo, so I'll answer that later in the question and answer session. Thank you, Tristan. Tristan is still mute.
Okay. Thank you very much for that comprehensive response there, and it's great to see that this community exists across Southeast Asia, and we managed to connect with our friends and colleagues from across the region as well. So the questions are now coming in thick and fast, and I'm doing my very best to try to listen and also look at the questions, but I'm not sure how good my multitasking skills are. So I will invite our panelists to look at the questions as well. And so when we come to hear from you again, you've had a chance to look at it. But there's one question which I thought I would respond to, because it was a methodological question. And the question was around whether or not the fact that the majority of creative and social enterprises are less than 3 years old means that it's because many of them don't last more than 3 years, or whether it's because many of them have started very recently. I think the answer is definitely the latter, that this is a very young sector, and the majority of organizations that we surveyed, certainly at least, have been established very recently, and that's a very encouraging sign. However, of course, it's worth mentioning that this survey was done before the onset of COVID-19, so we're not sure about the impact of COVID-19 on particularly some of these smaller organizations. But we are, and I will put another plug out for a survey that we're currently undertaking, which is to look at the COVID response for social enterprises globally. So if you do get a chance, I would encourage you to complete that, anybody on the call today. So with that, I'm now going to hand over to our final speaker today, and that is Nin, who is the founder of Lawe, a wonderful creative enterprise that we've worked with for a number of years through a number of programs. So Nin, over to you.
Thank you, Tristan. Good afternoon and good morning, everybody. My name is Nindya. I am a co-founder and a chairperson of Lawe. Lawe is a community social enterprise based in Yogyakarta. We work in 2 missions. We are conserving Indonesia traditional handwoven and empowering women that work in that field. So I represent small creative and social enterprise. The research findings are all true. I'd like to share in our context as a small creative and social enterprise. I'd like to share about Lawe's experience. Lawe is a creative social enterprise that founded on 2004, when social enterprise is still rare to be found. So we work hard on balancing our business and social programs to reach what we call sustainable. Sometimes it's like split personality, that when you think that you need to maximize your profit, you need to work in your efficiency and productivity in your business, while in the same time, you need to cater the struggle of handwoven artisans that is include weavers, teachers, and the creative team, and also to cater to women empowerment issues that already embedded in Lawe. So for the financial support, we are in multi-stages. So it's like from the very small support from ourselves. We have 5 women as founders of Lawe, and then we expanded in family. So we got support from family, and then we got support also from cooperative. And then the next stage, we got funding support from state-owned state-owned enterprise. It's what you call PKBL in the like a CSR from state-owned enterprise. And then now we got the financial support from bank. So it's like a loan. And right now we are in the process to deal with impact investor, and we hope that we can get into that stage. So sustainability for Lawe is to make sure that we can provide livelihood to them who work with us. So it's not tremendous wealthy like that you can put a Lambo in your garage, but it's simple that enough earnings to put food on the table and to send children to the higher education. And for the inclusivity, Lawe is open wide to anyone that willing to work on hand-woven industries. And we are open to them that has disabilities and also them that are marginalized. So as long as they match with the skill we need, this is what we will accept them, and we can collaborate and work together with them. So this is what every creative and social enterprise can do to put the inclusivity in the business. What we think about the challenge for creative and social enterprises to stand strong as a business that can start from scratch, that's not easy. Then to fulfill the social mission while doing business that integrated with that mission, that's another story. Then you still need to work creatively. And that's what we call work with love, because we love to work in this creative industry. So once Lawe got session from a business consultant, he asked why we always seek for problems. In a handwoven business, we deal with micro industries that has challenge on production capacities and time frames. So we cannot enter to the mainstream market. Then Lawe what we do now is we try to replicate our work outside our headquarters or our workshop in Yogyakarta. So we conducted training from Sumatra, Kalimantan, Sulawesi until Timor Island. Then we try to build a collaboration with the hand-woven artisans in those remote areas, which are another challenge due to quality assurance and so on. So for Lawe, the work on conserving traditional handwoven that considered as one of Indonesia treasures, we also deal with regenerating issues. What make these millennials now want to join the wagon on producing and promoting their ancestor legacy is a big homework for us to solve. So this is our vision, that Lawe will become a center of education for handwoven artisan groups. And this is not our business model to grow big and build factories, but we want to replicate what we do in Lawe now and build a network for collaborations. So as a common challenge, we found that it's not easy to articulate what we do, even to package our social mission, give voices and translate it into communication way through media, and to educate potential customer and client. It's not easy. And after that, we still need to put it that in a prospectus. It's way far for us. And what we think that what focus that can support the quality of environment and for creative and social enterprise. We talk about BSO, or business service organization, that is Ibu Hanifah say about coaching and mentoring, and also Jeffrey talk about coaching and mentoring to support the business. LAWE is proudly member and board of two BSOs that are Teras Mitra and BIDO. BIDO is a business and export development organization. Both organizations works to support and grow businesses, small scale businesses. Teras Mitra works close with they that has environment issues and environment missions, while BIDO works close to micro and small enterprises. So those two organizations works closely with a grassroots enterprise. We give coaching and sharing knowledge on daily basis, and both also works on connecting the dot between producers to markets. So we got the experience that every stage of enterprise has their own need, like in the reports mentioned also that it's including the need of financial support. It comes on stages. It comes on stages from family fund to investors capital, and this BSO can help enterprises to understand their needs and helps them to build their strategies. So some of these micro enterprises needs to learn how to, this is the example what we face in the field, that some of those micro enterprises actually only need small effort to improve their businesses, like learn how to photograph their products and they can promote them in a social media. Some still learn how to split between businesses and private money. They usually mix it up, and some need access to specific market which is a niche market for creative industries, and some need access to export market, and some need assistance how to even write their business plan and define their business strategies. And social enterprises, there are two opportunities on funding creative and social enterprises. So the first is you can find fortune if you support emerging products like culinary products, like Jeffrey mentioned before, finding BT creative social enterprise that can be replicated through Indonesia's remote areas, like what Ibu Vivi said, that maybe you will not find fortune, but you can reach broader impacts and build Indonesia as well.
Great.
That's
Okay.
from me, Tristan. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Nin. Great to hear that. And I think in your story of LAWE, you've addressed many of the questions that have been there in the chat box, and particularly interesting your story around how you've developed from attracting different types of capital to now talking to impact investors. I think that journey is really interesting to hear about, and I think reflects the journey that many creative and social entrepreneurs are on at the moment, in the nascent stage of the sector as well. Okay, so I'm conscious of time now. We have about 15 minutes to go. We have lots of questions there in the text box. So I'm going to invite some of our panelists to come back now and to respond to some of those questions. But I'm going to ask you to speak very, very quickly, just maybe a minute or so, to give some very key insights. I think you have covered many of these issues already. And I might try to be quite directive with my question, because particularly to Ibu Vivi, I'm going to invite you back first of all. So there's lots of questions there around the role of government, regulation, definitions. So my quite direct question to you is, do you think that there needs to be definitions of social enterprises, of creative enterprises in Indonesia? And what is the government thinking on that at the moment? We are aware, of course, that there was a draft definition of social enterprise within the entrepreneurship bill, the draft entrepreneurship bill in Indonesia. So what are your thoughts on that? It'd be great to hear from you first of all. You're on mute. You're on mute. Ibu Vivi, you're still on mute, so you take yourself off.
Okay, is it okay now? Okay. From the government perspective, we need to put some foundations. One thing that we have done is under midterm development plan 2020-2024, we already one of the strategy, the development strategy is for creative economy, including the ecosystem, the needs for developing its ecosystem. Usually based on these, the many local governments, provincial and district level, will elaborate further how would this strategy be done in the local level. In terms of the regulation, it could also be an anchor to develop further, to revise if it is necessary, or create a new one. Maybe well, we have one more vehicle or instruments like omnibus law, yeah, because the creative economy passed several laws, yeah. So but still need further discussion. If we need further regulatory framework, will take some more discussion and of course time. Meanwhile, I would suggest rather that we develop more critical mass in term based on the report. Yeah, we know exactly about the difference. That we need to communicate, to educate, to inform about the difference, how to distinguish between the work itself and mapping about the condition as well as the solutions. Some solutions and recommendation are in the report. That's trigger some ideas to discuss further, including with the governments, related units, ministries, and I would think that this could be a basis to really work together to develop the ecosystem. On the startup itself, I think by now, I mean by the current situation, I would suggest to keep innovative. I could just say that. I mean, it's not easy days, maybe up until next year, but I think by working together, like Nindya said, and also work between through the mentorship and also trainings, I think we could build a resilience for this creative and social enterprise. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ibu Vivi. I'm going to go straight to Jeffrey there because there's lots of questions then around finance, and I'm going to reinterpret them. There's many of them, and my question has two parts. First of all, how do you balance the impact and the financial returns? Really, some questions really asking about some of the issues that you might have in balancing it. And second of all, how can we encourage tech companies to better communicate the impact that they're having as well? Because I think the question there around saying, well, perhaps some of these companies are doing great things in Indonesia, but they might not actually know that they are doing it, and how to measure and communicate that impact.
Yeah, those are great questions. The second question is first, how do they communicate? I don't think they need to communicate it. The reason why is because for us as investors, we know the impact, right? And especially for us in Alpha JWC, we really pay close attention to the impact that the startups and the companies are doing, because that's also one of the interest area of our investors as well. And on the first question, how to balance, I don't think we need to balance it, right? We believe that the most important thing is to be successful, because no matter how good the company is in creating an impact, but if the company is only doing a very small scale, it's not impactful. To be impactful, the company needs to do something at the scale, right? So that's ideal. Of course, if there's a limitation in the model, then the company can make a smaller impact in their own way. That's also fine. So I will say that it's more, let's focus more on how to scale the impact as big as possible, so that it can do a good for as many people as possible.
Okay, thank you very much indeed there. I'm now going to go back to Roshini at AVPN for your reflections. I know that you have some reflections on what you've heard today. So Roshini, are you still with us? And I'll just hand the floor to you for just a minute or so.
Well, thank you, Tristan. Yes, I'm still here. Actually, this has been a fascinating discussion, and I'm so encouraged by the enthusiasm and the dynamism of the creative and social enterprise space in Indonesia. There's tremendous opportunity here, as we have heard, from across the ecosystem. And it's very nice to see the research come to life through the lived experiences of all the panelists. In particular, I think the idea of creative hubs and the emergence of creative hubs across Indonesia is really critical. And I'm so excited that we have heard how they are growing. And this is important, not just for the creative aspect of the enterprises, but also to help them strengthen readiness for capital, build their capacity to connect to investment, and also to kind of connect to national policies. And all of these things having to work together in tandem to build the ecosystem. We think that, creative hubs play a very important role here as intermediaries. And so here at AVPN, as a network and as a platform convener across the ecosystem, we welcome any sort of collaboration that investors, social enterprises, and hubs are looking for to reach out to a broader group of potential investors. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. And I'll go to Tita now for a final reflection from you. What do you think, what recommendation would you say is the most important that's come from the report? So indeed, if there's something else that you think is most important to help grow creative and social enterprises in Indonesia?
Yeah, as one of our suggestions in the bill is that we should have at least, if you know that as an entity have a chief technology officer, a city should have a chief creative economy officer, sort of, because then it will be able to connect government and all the other stakeholders of building creative economy. And that we put in the bill of Bandung. So we are willing to be the experiment for the whole rest of the cities in Indonesia. And again, we as ICCN are building a dashboard of creative cities, which we put our commitments and our concept to the government KPI. And we built this dashboard for the local government to make it easy for them to make decisions based on creative economy performance of the communities and also other entities. So, to suggest that a bill or a report or research cannot be just a dead research, but then it should be activated through the communities that use it. And last thing is maybe for the Indonesian government that, of course, we know that there are 3 cities in Indonesia that becomes UCCN members, which are Pekalongan, Bandung, and Ambon. But once we get in the network, there is no support, tangible support that really is directly directed to the city because of the different nomenclature maybe in the structural level of the government interest. So that's why this needs to be made more compact and to have a regulation that is more cascading from the top level to the local level. So those are my 2 takes from this session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Well, so I think this conversation could have gone on for at least another couple of hours, but we hope that this will just be the beginning of dialogue around the findings of this really interesting report. And we and our partners, I think I can speak for them, ESCAP and AVPN will be continuing to look at how we can implement, support partners to implement, act on the findings from these two reports. But thank you once again to our panelists for joining us. I'm now going to hand back to Kemi for some final housekeeping and final wrap-up comments from you, Kemi. So over to you.
Thank you very much, Tristan, and thank you very much to all speakers, panelists, and presenters in today's Creative and Social Enterprise Research launch. We hope that all the information presented today can spark further discussions, conversations, and potential partnerships or collaborations. We'd also like to thank all participants for attending this session and joining in virtually. In order for us to improve our programs and events, we would like to ask your support in filling in a feedback evaluation form. The URL and QR code is available here on the screen. We'll leave the room open for the next 5 minutes for participants to fill in the surveys. Once again, thank you so much. We hope this has been an insightful session for all of you, and we hope to meet you again either in person or virtually in the near future. Thank you and have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.